I'm going to talk about some herbs that are just what people would consider weeds. A lot of our weeds are actually incredibly medicinal, and that's one thing I like about them is that they're everywhere. Anyone can find them, and you can make your own medicine from them if you are so willing to do so. So I gave you a handout, and I'm going to start with the first one on the handout, and then go through, talk about. Basically, what I'm going to do is talk about the plants. I'll show them to you. And if you have questions as we're going through, feel free to ask, because if we're talking about dandelion, and you have a question about that, just stop me, just let me know. This is, chill, it's just like a group of us together talking about weeds, and a few other things. And then I'm going to show you a few of the things that I make from them. And I will show you, if you want to taste them, you can. I'll show you a way that you can do that. And this is just like a small sample of what I do. So I'll just tell you, I'm an herbalist. I grow a lot of my own plants that I process for medicine in teas, tinctures, syrups, salves, all kinds of products that I make from them. And I forage a lot of the plants too. So I grow some, I forage some, and then I also buy some from different herbalists around and different companies that I think are reputable, which if you're interested in that, I can tell you what they are if you want to order some things. And then I have a few books up here that y'all are welcome to look at when we're done. There's just a few books that I think are really good, kind of simple and straightforward. Some of them tell about how to make different things, and some will teach you about like where to forage, how to forage, and all that. And I'll go into that just a little bit. But this morning when I was out, like all of this, I just got from my yard, because we try to have less grass and more weeds in our yard. So we have the weird house on the street that's got like tons of stuff in it, like fruit trees and all the weeds and lots of flowers and everything kind of working together in sort of a ecosystem that's trying to be balanced. It goes up and down. But I will talk about something that's very common that you'll see all around. This is called plantain. Well, actually, hold on. I'm going to start with dandelion because that's the first one on my list. Sorry, I'm getting away from myself here. Okay, so I was out this morning, well, just a little while ago, digging up some dandelion for you, and it can look different ways. You see how it looks here? The leaves look a little more serrated, and then as it gets bigger, it kind of changes shape a little bit. It's still dandelion. You can still use it in any stage, okay? So the bigger one, the root would look like this. So I dug this up and I just did a quick rinse with it. Now, if I'm going to make medicine from this, I would clean this quite a bit more. I would scrub all the soil off of it. And then I would chop it up and either make a tincture or a tea out of it. But dandelion is one of my favorite plants because pretty much, everyone knows what that is. I mean, you've seen the yellow flowers see, these are the flower heads that are already closed up. And then, and after the flower is done, and then it makes the little seeds that like you blow and make a wish. So most of us have done that. So it's a great plant in my opinion, because it's easy to find. One caveat of whenever you're harvesting plants, make sure it's in a clean place. Like I know my yard is clean. We don't spray anything. But a lot of plants that you'll find like on roads or on waysides typically are sprayed. So you definitely don't want to harvest those for medicine. I mean, you could use that as an opportunity to correctly ID the plants, but I would not harvest them for medicine. So make sure that wherever you do, it is a clean source. So dandelion is called Taraxacum officinale. And one of the things I'll say before we get going with plants, it's super important to actually know the scientific name. And the reason is because, especially really everywhere, but in the South, someone's like, well, that's called, blackroot. And like this other thing's called blackroot. Like colloquial names can represent lots of different plants. So you want to make sure you're talking about the actual plant that you're talking about and not something else. So that is why I put that on there. So you can use the roots of this plant medicinally. You can use the leaves. And some people also use the flowers, like very traditionally, people would make dandelion wine out of the flowers. You would just get the flowers when they're in full bloom, and they're not, you know, starting to die off at all. Yes.
I made a salad out of dandelion leaves and flowers once.
That is so awesome. Was it good?
It was kind of good.
So, yeah. So that brings up, so dandelion has a bit of a bitterness to it. And when you, as the leaves get larger, I think they're good for medicine still, but when they're small, they are really good in salads. So in certain, like in France, they grow dandelion greens for people to eat in general, but you can just go get your own greens for free, and they're not like fancy and expensive. They're free and in your yard, and you can saute these. You can saute them with a little bit of oil and some onions and garlic, and they do have a bitter quality, but bitters are really important for our digestion. Okay, one of the things that we don't tend to get a lot of in this culture is bitter foods, and bitters are really, really good for you, like coffee, maybe dark chocolate. Those are kind of the main things. And so one of the things that I make out of dandelion are bitters, and I'll share that with you later that y'all can taste if you want. But bitters are very good for digestion. If you take a few bitters before you eat and a little bit afterwards, it's really helpful for your digestion. Dandelion is known to be really helpful for liver congestion. This is a herb that I would use in general in the spring, especially. As people are coming out of the winter and eating heavier foods and things like that, our digestion can be a bit stagnant. And so I would definitely use bitters, and dandelion is one of my favorites because it is easy to harvest. It's, you know, I think it tastes pretty good. There's a scale of bitters. There's some that are so bitter that just like turn your tongue upside down. And then there's some that are more in the mild scale. I would consider dandelion a mild bitter, not a super astringent bitter like gentian or artichoke leaf or something like that. So there's some that are a bit more intense. So the leaf is sort of a diuretic. And when I say diuretic, I don't mean like a pharmaceutical diuretic. It doesn't act like that. Herbs don't tend to act like that on your body. It's just kind of more of an what other word that herbalists use is aquaretic. It just like kind of helps you, you know, urinate a little more. So if you're having a UTI or something like that, where it's really good to urinate a lot, it can support that. So you can eat it. You can use it for medicine. Let's see. It's, you know, it's nutritious too. So that's one of the things. You can eat it raw in a salad when the leaves are young. Okay. But when I mean, you can eat it when they're big, but it's just a lot more bitter. So that would kind of be up to you to decide. The interesting thing about the roots that I really like, and burdock has the same thing, is it has inulin in it, which is a prebiotic, which is something that actually helps feed your gut bacteria. You know how we talk about the gut bacteria and keeping them healthy? Well, the inulin and things that are prebiotics, they actually feed, they're like food for your little bacteria in your gut. So that's another good thing about it. You could also, you know, if you wanted to, with the roots, you can dry them and roast them. And a lot of people like that as a coffee substitute. So there's this stuff called Dandy Blend. You could add it into your coffee just to add a little extra nutrition to your coffee. Roasting it kind of makes it a little bit more like, it makes it darker and has a richer flavor. This is a blend that I make that has roasted dandelion in it. It has roasted carob, chaga, and chicory. And it's really, really good. When you make it, it's really dark, and it's sort of, I don't really consider it a coffee substitute, but it's some people, if they don't want to drink coffee, you could have, it has that general sort of flavor, but it's also very, very good for you and quite delicious, actually. So that's dandelion. Does anybody have any questions about our friend?
Yeah, how does the bitter gene come into the bitters being good for you? And some people taste bitter much more intensely than others.
Yes, but what was the question? How does the bitter
gene?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. I know that people have to, do you know?
No. I was going to say, can you like rephrase the question a little?
Yes, okay. Yes, thank you. So she was asking about how does the bitter gene come into play? And would that make it, so are you asking, would that make bitters better for you? Or would it make it just that you're like more acutely aware of them?
Well, I know that if you have strong bitter genes, you taste the bitter more intensely. I
Right.
don't know if that also makes a difference in the effect of bitterness on your digestion.
I don't know. That's a good question. I would just think off the top of my head. I mean, if you do taste it, then you would need less of it, because the important thing with bitters, and I tell people this, is that you don't want to take like a capsule of it. That's not how bitters work. You need to have it on your tongue. You need to taste it, and then your tongue starts to salivate. Okay. And that's like the beginning of the digestive process. You want all of that. That's why it's like you take bitters orally. I mean, like as a liquid on your tongue. You wouldn't just take like capsules of dandelion, and that may have some benefit for your liver. But as far as bitters and supporting your whole digestive process, you need to taste that flavor.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, that's-
Matt.
I was wondering the nutritive difference between eating the dandelion leaves raw versus wilting or sauteing. Is one better than the other?
I actually think, and from what I've read and understand, for a lot of greens, especially like some of the bitter greens, it is actually better. They're more bioavailable if you cook them in a little bit of fat. So that fat component helps pull out some of the bioavailability. Anybody have any other questions? And we can revisit it at the end if you want. Okay, so that's dandelion. And okay, so chickweed is another fun little cutie spring plant I love. It's called Stellaria media, and that's and this one does not have any flowers because it's a little bit past the flowering stage, but it means like little star, and the flowers are tiny little white flowers, and there are two different kinds. Yes.
Yeah, Star Chickweed was trying to take over one of my friends.
I think you're probably right. It does that. So you can just pull it up and eat it. Okay, just like eat it. So if you want, it's also, you'll have chickens. So I mean, chickens actually do like it, chickweed. So it kind of, this plant is, I mean, it just grows in, you'll see it in the spring, or you will see it sometimes, you know, later in areas that are a little bit shaded. But when it gets really hot, it starts to get really leggy and it doesn't taste as good. But you can just like eat this. I mean, when I'm out in the garden, I just like pull it up and eat it. So it's very good for you. It's pretty tasty raw. So you just use the above ground parts of this plant. You don't use the roots of that. And so the word alterative is sort of an old fashioned word. Well, actually the more old fashioned word that herbalists used to use is blood cleanser. So alterative just means it helps with all of the eliminative pathways of your body. So it helps with digestion. It helps with, you know, like respiration. It's just very sort of like generally healthy, and it kind of helps everything move where it needs to go. It's also demulcent, which means it brings a sort of moist quality. So this plant I really like to make salves out of because it's very soothing for the skin. For like minor cuts and abrasions, you can make a salve out of it. The way that you make salves is you have to first make an oil, and then you can make a salve out of it. But we won't go into that now because that's like a whole nother like 3-hour class. But I'll just say it's also a lymphagogue. So chickweed and cleavers, which I didn't bring up here, is another one. It's helpful. It helps your lymph system just kind of move things. Like if there's stagnation, you feel that in your lymph glands, it helps move that out. So that's one of the things I love about chickweed. It tastes really good. This isn't one I would cook. I would just definitely eat this one raw, because like if you cook it, it just like turns into nothing. So I would throw this in some salads too. Sadie, you could put this in your salads with your dandelion.
I was gonna say I was looking for that to add to my salad.
Yeah.
But Mom and I filled out the garden and I didn't know what it looked like, which is all I
Oh, well, clever you can eat too. But yeah, so come look at it and make sure you can positively ID it. And that's really important. It's also just like really nutritious. I love this one for, also some people will use it for like kind of cysts and things like that in the body. I like adding it to formulas for that. A lot of the herbs, and actually several of these up here are demulcent, but more herbs are more drying than demulcent. So the plantain, the chickweed, and the violet are all demulcent, which means they have a moisturizing quality. So if you were to have like a really dry cough, then this would be a plant that you could use for that. You could make, you could add it to a syrup, or you could dry it and add it to tea as well. So demulcent herbs are for when you have a dry cough, not when you have a productive cough. You want this other plant when you need that. I'll talk about that. All right, does anybody have any questions about chickweed? Yes.
I guess it wouldn't be one you would dry for tea.
You can dry it. I mean, I have seen people do that. I haven't done it because it does kind of shrivel up. It's very, very small when you do that. There's not much to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so I think this one is better to make an oil out of for salves, or to just tincture is what I do with it. Yes.
Can you eat the stem or just the leaf?
Yeah, you can eat the stem and just like eat, because the stem is actually very, it's not like hard and woody, so you can eat the stem as well. And it tastes nice. It just tastes kind of like a fresh spring, like you just feel like a cow like chewing grass. It's very just like, you know, because the stem's kind of hanging out of your mouth. So it's kind of a fun little plant to eat. I like it a lot. Okay. Okay, so we'll go on to violet, which most people have seen violet around. I mean, it grows really readily, but it's got these beautiful kind of heart-shaped leaves. And the reason on this one, I was like viola, just SPP, that means like species. There's so many different kinds of violet. You know, I even have trouble like keying out the exact one. But the ones that are typically used medicinally are the blue or the deep purple ones, not so much the yellow ones or the white ones. So there is like a lot of different species, and you could key them out. Viola odorata is the one a lot of people try to get because it smells really, really good. And so this time of year, you're really only going to find the leaves because they've already finished flowering, which the flowers are amazing medicinally too, and also in salads. You can put the leaves in salads and the flowers. So the leaves and flowers are both edible. And also the roots can be used medicinally as well. And they're just super beautiful. I think they make a nice ground cover. You'll see bees really coming to them in the early part of the year. And they're kind of really interesting the way they grow. If you ever pull one up, you'll see it's just got these, it keeps putting up new leaves from these little like kind of side shoots. And there's just, it's just a super, I don't know, I just think this is a pretty amazing plant. Also, because it's so kind of delicate, and people think of it as super delicate and gentle, and it is, but it's also like a really powerful plant. It helps people, like traditionally herbalists have used it for people with like cysts and like internal cysts, like breast cysts. It's very good for dissolving kind of hard things like that. So you would use, when I make a tincture of this, I don't know if I brought one for y'all to try. I think I did because I really like it. I use the flowers and the leaves and sometimes the roots all together to make a tincture. It's just a super cool plant. And like, it's also so hardy. Like I pulled this up, I could break this into 3 or 4 different pieces and replant it somewhere else and it would totally grow. Yes.
My neighbor Emma, she took some wild violets from our mountain. Well, it's actually her mountain. And she planted them in her garden, and they grew really big.
Did they? That's awesome. I love that. That's the thing. Violet's like a really powerful, beautiful plant. So it's an alternative, a demulcent. It's very moisturizing as well, and a lymphagogue, but it's also really known, like when I work with people who have cyst kinds of issues or things like that, we often use violet as part of a formula.
It's used in Western Europe for lung cancer.
Yeah. Thank you. I usually don't say the word cancer when I'm giving talks, but a lot of these herbs are used in different ways. So, you know, thanks for saying that. Yeah, so that is like, people have used it for breast cancer as part of a protocol, if that's the way that you want to go. So, yeah, it's an amazing plant.
You have violet species that are hazardous.
No, violet's like one of those that's just like very safe, things like that. There's certain plant families that you really just like have got to key out to make sure that you're safe, like things in the parsley family, because there's a few poisonous ones, but violet,
I was wondering about the chickweed, because there's a non-native chickweed that's prolific.
yeah, I don't know if this is even native, honestly.
The star chickweed is the one that has.
The bigger,
bigger
yes. So this is probably the not native one.
Okay.
Just like that's not native, plantain's not native, dandelion's not native, burdoc's not native. So most of these are non-native plants. This is not native. So none of these actually that I'm talking about are native. So yeah, so some people, you know, get mad at the plants because they're not native. It's not their fault, but you can use them for medicine if you want to, you know, eradicate them, so to speak, which would be a big charge at this point. So I feel like the plants are here. Let's just use the plants for medicine. These all are considered naturalized. They've come, you know, most of them have come from Europe. Dandelion, plantain, chickweed, I think too, burdock, valerian, that's a European plant. That's not really naturalized that much. But you will see motherwort is kind of naturalized a little bit too. So some of them are opportunistic. Okay, so burdock is a fun one because we were talking about this earlier. I love burdock. I mean, it definitely, you know, will take over in a good way, in my opinion. So it's got these huge leaves, like giant. Yes, Steve.
I got this machine here, which is the hide.
In the leaves. You
Like
could.
opening, yeah.
So they're huge, right? So like, I was thinking about like, what can you do with the leaves? The leaves are not used medicinally, but one time we had we were doing a cookout and we didn't have any plates. We used these, okay? It worked. And then you just like have this recycled plates. You just like, they're also, if you cut them, you can use them as mulch around your, like I'll cut them when I'm cutting them when they get, you know, they're just too much in the way because they take over the pathways. And I will chop them up a little bit, put them around my tomato plants and things like that to make good mulch. I bet you could make clothes out of them, Sadie. I just feel like there's like a lot of things you could do with these. And I bet kids could figure out like so many ways to use them. So most people have seen burdock. This is the like giant leaves, but they also have these as they're coming up, they're emerging. The leaves are a little more silvery on the back, but then they have the crenellated leaves and a little bit of a reddish stalk in the middle. A really interesting vein pattern on the back. So, but the part that we use medicinally is the root. And so as you can see, I was trying to dig this up this morning. And I mean, I did not even get like half the root. I just got like that much. And it probably had that much. And when I'm feeling more patient, then I can really get down. And I mean, digging it up is hard work. I will definitely tell you that. Right. I see people responding to that affirmatively. But this plant has long been used in many Asian cultures just as food. So you dig the root up and chop it up into little matchsticks and you saute it. This is how I've done it. You saute it with like garlic and soy sauce. It's amazing. And it has, this has so much inulin in it, like way more than dandelion. And so, I mean, you can really like, sometimes if you eat a lot of it, it can like kind of up your digestion a little more than you would like. So until you get used to it. But so what I would do with this is then like the dandelion, all I would do is clean that and chop it up. This, I would, you know, really clean up the edges, cut all the sort of extremely woody parts off the outside. And then when you get to the inside, it's just kind of cool. You have this like really beautiful white root. And it's oxidized a little bit where I cut it with my shovel, but you would just cut that part off. You could cut it in, you know, I would cut it, probably slice it, you know, laterally, and then cut it up if I wanted to dry it for tea. And then, but if I wanted to make a tincture out of it, I would just cut it up just like this, and then put it in, you know, 50% alcohol. And then that would be my tincture. I love burdock for a lot of things. it's really helpful for people that have skin conditions. It can be very helpful for some people with acne and all kinds of skin eruptions because it helps on that level. It really supports the liver, which is part of like, when your liver's supported, it helps with skin kind of things. So I really like it for that. I use it, in formulas with lots of different plants, really. And the thing is about burdock is starting to get a little woody. It's a biennial. So what that means is like the first year it'll just have leaves. Okay. And it won't, you'll just see like a rosette of leaves on the bottom. The second year, and that's the best time to harvest it, is the end of the first year or the beginning of the second year. Because the second year it puts up that big flower stalk. And then it's got the little purple flowers, which bees and butterflies love. It's in the aster family. And then it has the little burrs, if anybody knows the burrs. The burrs that like get on your dog or in your hair, or I had to cut my son's hair out because it had so many burrs in it. So that's the second year, and then it dies after that year. So the second year, the roots, so it's the first year, it's got this long, beautiful taproot, but the second year is as it goes into the second year, and this one is the beginning of the second year, it starts to get really woody inside, and then the root just splits into a whole bunch of little tiny rootlets, and then it rots, and then it's gone. But you keep seeing it because it puts out those seeds from that second year, the biennial nature of it, and then you keep getting more and more and more. So if you want to not have it, you have to get rid of the seed heads on the second year. Does that make sense? So it's really good for lymph, hepatic, that means liver. It's an alternative. It's also super nutritious. Like I was saying, it's a prebiotic. It's got tons of inulin in it. And if you make a tincture with it, you'll see, because you'll shake it up and it'll be this like milky white color. So that's the inulin being pulled out by the alcohol. All right. Any questions about burdock?
Silly question.
No, there's no silly questions.
You come across a whole bunch of it.
Yeah, so much.
And how would you tell the first year's from the second? You want the first year one, right?
Yeah, so you can like collect it at the end of the first year. Like if you see the rosettes, kind of just think in your, like try to mark it in your head of like, there they are. And then you go back in the fall. So typically for roots, mostly for roots, you want to collect them in the fall or the early spring, or, just whenever, like right now, this dandelion looks great. Like I would totally use this, even though it's a little further into the spring, it's fine to use this now. But like, as it gets further into the summer, it's not the best time to collect roots typically, because roots kind of put their energy down in the fall and they still have all the kind of energy of the plants in the root.
You say they died.
The second year.
Mhm. The only one I attempted to dig years ago.
Yeah,
The last one.
the last, first and last.
The root was.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, in 2 years, it can get so huge. And it's amazing. If you go to Oasis Market, they sell gobo. It's under the name gobo, G-O-B-O, and you'll see the big roots like that big. They're cut and wrapped, and you can get those and eat them. But from my understanding, people that grow burdock for food, they will grow it in like sandy soil and not like the thick clay that takes like 3 hours to dig. They'll grow it in something that's like actually easy to get out. So, because it's really, really hard to get out. And it's just like, you're just like, I mean, so like, I think it has benefit. I was thinking about that this morning when I was digging it, that if you have really clay soil and places that need to kind of be broken up, it is good for that because it puts down a long taproot and then it spreads out and helps kind of break up and aerate the soil a little bit.
There's something that grows like burdock that the leaf looks similar, but it's scragglier and it's got deep red veining.
Oh,
What is that?
That is yellow dock. And that is a really incredible medicinal plant as well. If you pull up the root of that and look at it, it should be yellow. Break it and look at it. It's very bitter. It's incredible it's very good for the liver and the lymph. And And very good for like if you have stagnant digestion, a little bit constipated, it can help just like move things along. It's a really, I like that plant a lot. Yeah. And so the leaves of the yellow dock are not like fuzzy at all. Like this is slightly fuzzy. Those are not fuzzy at all. Yeah. Any other questions, Matt? Did you? No? Okay. All right, plantain. This is plantain. And so this is, there are two kinds that grow around. And it's funny, just in my yard, I only have this one. So this is the broadleaf plantain. And there's also a narrow leaf one that the leaves are very, I mean, the leaves are like maybe about that size. They're very narrow, but they do have the longitudinal veins on the back. And so,
My
yes.
chickens love that.
Do they? This is a really incredible. If you have animals, like a friend of mine who has rabbits, she'll feed them all these kind of medicinal plants as well. So it's kind of cool. I just pulled up the strings. If you pull, this is just a side note on this, but like plants have so many purposes. If you pull the strings on the back, if you're into like making things, you can make cordage out of the strings. You can kind of dry them and make a little bit of kind of weave them together and let them dry, and you can make cordage. You could make like, you know, a necklace out of it. I mean, so anyways, you can do that with it. Super cool plant. It grows readily. And if you let it go like in your yard, you'll have a ton of it. So in one other way to identify it is in the fall, it'll put up a long flower stalk that is sort of brown, and it's one of the things, it's psyllium is what's in that flower stalk. It's that bulking agent that people use to support digestion. So that's one way it's used. This plant is like a foremost plant for salves and stings. And this is a plant, even my kids know about it because I have like so much stinging nettle in my yard because I use it medicinally. And so if you get stung by nettle or a bee or anything like that, you can just take this and chew it up, literally just like chew it up, and it sounds kind of gross, and just put it right on your bee sting. So that's called a spit poultice. And so the saliva from your mouth and the chewing action help activate the plant, and it's very helpful for that. I just did it recently. When it wasn't raining, was walking in the yard barefooted, and I stepped on a bee and it stung the bottom of my foot. So I just like grabbed this and immediately put it on there. And it was very helpful.
What if you just hurt yourself? Can you still do that?
Yeah, like if you have like a bump or a bruise, yeah, just like chew it up and put it on there. Not like if you have a really deep cut, I wouldn't, because it's going to introduce some bacteria to it, but a bee sting, a bump or a bruise, something that's not like a deep, not a puncture wound or anything like that. Very helpful. And as you kind of ball it up, you can see it starting to change color. That mucilage is starting to come out because it is like very mucilaginous. It's one of my favorite plants. And this you can use as tea. So you can like harvest it. I harvest it and dry it and then use this as tea. I also make tincture from this. I also make an oil, which is then made into a salve. So those are the three ways that I use this plant. You can pretty much harvest it any time of year, just when the leaves look good and healthy. Just harvest it, chop it up if you're gonna use it for tea. And then if you're gonna use it for tincture, chop it up finely, put it in a mason jar and throw some alcohol over it, let it sit for 6 weeks, and you will have, and shake it. That's how that's like a real, just like simple way to do it. Yes.
To make tinctures, is it always the same recipe?
So for like what we consider like the wise woman way, which is just the kind of old fashioned, just simple way to do it, it is basically the same. There's also like, you can get very scientific about it, and some herbalists like will measure things and use a certain percentage of alcohol. They think that some constituents extract them better in different percentage alcohols than other. But for just like a basic, for all this stuff that I'm talking about, this is actually plantain, this tincture. So what I do is like, I just chop it up, fill the jar with the plant material, and then I fill the jar again with, at least 40 proof, up to 50 proof. And this was actually a little bit higher. This was a 170, a 137 proof rum. So it's a higher, so that means the proof is, you know, closer to 65% alcohol. So the percentage alcohol needs to be at least 40 to 50% alcohol. The proof is like, if it says 100 proof alcohol, that's 50%. If that's 50, oh no, am I saying that? If it says 100 proof, that's 50% alcohol. Does that make sense? So it needs to be a certain percentage so that the plant, so it extracts the medicinal qualities and it's stable and nothing will mold. And you have to shake it and make sure that the top is covered. And typically people will let it sit anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks or longer.
And then just the best way to store it and how long can I use it for?
So after you do this for that amount of time and then strain it really well, put it into a dark. So this is what I make the medicine in. And then when I'm storing it for long-term storage, I put it in a darker colored jar. If you don't have that, just keep it in a cabinet. Light is not good for it. So that's why typically you see tincture jars. They're either like dark blue or they're brown, which is more typical because light does break it down. But if you don't have that, just store it in a cabinet. So for the first 6 weeks, do that. And then honestly, I mean, it will last 3 years, maybe more. I mean, alcohol is really stable. Teas last, dried herbs last, you know, maybe a year and a half, and then they start to lose their potency. Oils, a year. Tinctures last the longest. That's one of the advantages of tinctures. It lasts a long time, but also there's disadvantages. Not everyone can, I mean, it's not for kids. It's not for people who can't drink alcohol or who are allergic to it, even though you're taking a tiny amount. But then you can also make syrups out of many of these things too, and put those in the fridge, and then they'll last for a year and a half as well. And then there's one other thing I'll say about that another way that I like to make to work with plants is I make an oxymel, and and that's a different way to do it. It doesn't last quite as long as a tincture, but what it is you extract the plant material in apple cider vinegar and honey, and so it tastes good, and then you don't have to worry about the alcohol issue. Apple cider vinegar is really good for your gut and digestion as well. So I'll let y'all taste this if you want. This is a liver immune oxymel. I make lots of oxymels because they taste good. They're easy to take. Can get my kids to take them. And these will last a good year, you know, and what you can do is just stick them in the fridge if you're ever, you know, questionable. And honestly, if you look at it and it has mold on it, you know, it's gone bad. Alcohol will never have mold on it. But I've never had that happen with an oxymel. I mean, theoretically it can happen, but I've never had it happen. So, and I've had mine lasting longer than a year and a half, you know, the ones at the back of the cabinet. I'm like, oh, I made this 6 years ago. Let's see how it is, you know, and it tends to be fine. I wouldn't sell it to anyone, but I'll take it. Okay.
I'm a little confused. On the
Yes.
alcohol.
Yes.
So if you're going to do the alcohol.
Yes.
one,
Mm-hmm.
What is the percentage proof of alcohol?
So the proof, okay, so when you go in, what I typically tell people to do is just get vodka because it's not expensive, and it comes in 80 proof and 100 proof, which means 40% alcohol or 50% alcohol. So those are the two, at least those are the two kind that we have at like the ABC store down here. And you know, if you can get, I mean, in certain, like in Virginia, they don't sell Everclear, which is very high proof alcohol, which is very beneficial for making certain tinctures, and then you cut it down with water, but they don't sell that here for some reason. They sell it in North Carolina, but so since you can't get that, usually the highest proof you can get is the 100 proof easily,
So
you
that's
know,
the one.
mm-hmm. And that'll extract just about everything that you're looking for.
Thank you.
Yes.
If you wanted to put these in a dehydrator
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, store them in that way.
Yes.
Does that deteriorate the benefit?
No, because you only do it, no, it doesn't. So when you're making a tea, So you put them in a dehydrator until they're like nice and crunchy, and then make sure that you then put them in a plastic bag or whatever you're storing. Try to get out all the air, zip it tight, and store it. Definitely store that in a totally dark area. And then, yeah, completely dark. This is, you could put it in a jar. The only downside with the jar, and I do store some for short-term storage, yeah, in jars, but if I have a whole bunch and I really want it, it's for long-term storage, I will do a Ziploc bag and put it like in a, you know, in a cabinet. And also you can smell, when you open it up, you should be able to smell the plant material. Because sometimes you'll get herbs and you'll be like, if you have to crumble it and you're like, I don't know, it's like, it's not good anymore. I mean, you should smell something. You should be like, yes, I smell whatever it is supposed to smell like, not just like green dust.
Can you use that in bread?
You could, yeah, you totally could. So you could grind that up and use it in bread. I typically just dry it and use it in teas, but there are some herbs and mushrooms that I dry and then powder. So they're in a powder form, and then those have other applications. You could use them in baking, you could use them in, you know, treats, things like that, and smoothies. Very easy to use that. Did you have a question? No, okay. All right. Yeah, those are all really good questions. Okay, plantain. All right, valerian. So these are all just the ones we've been talking about, are just like roadside weeds, definitely. These other ones are ones that I planted, but I like them because they kind of, once you plant it once, they kind of self-sow, not in an invasive, funny way, but in a like, oh, cool, I've got more plants kind of way. So this is valerian, which is a pretty little plant. It's in its own plant family, the valerian Acaceae family. It's very pretty. See, look, it's so tall. So I dug this out this morning. I love it. It's got these beautiful little umbel flowers that are very attractive to bees and butterflies. I often see them swarming around it. The leaves are very distinctive. And one of the things that people say about the roots, and y'all can all come try this later, to take a little rootlet off and just smell it. And a lot of people say it smells like dirty socks. I kind of like the smell, but that's just me. Some people like it, some people really hate it, but it's a really incredible plant. It's very beautiful. It's used, it's a European plant that has been brought, that you can buy the seeds for. Like these, I bought the seeds for these. And it's very well known to help with sleep. It's a hypnotic. So it's not anything you would take during the day. Like some people will drink like chamomile tea. That's not going to make you just like crash, you know, it's just calming, and it's good, gentle for kids, has a lot of benefits. Valerian is something that you would take at night when you want to go to sleep. I use it in formula. I have a formula here I use it in. So it's very good as a sedative. It's also an antispasmodic. Yeah.
Can you show the plant?
Oh, yeah. No, thank you for reminding me. We have some people on Zoom as well, so trying to, I think they can see that.
Yeah.
Here's the root. Okay.
Is the root the only place part that you use?
Yeah, you just use the root of this plant. So you would just dig it up and chop up that root and put it in alcohol. Sadie?
I know that you gave us some tincture to help me sleep.
Yeah.
Do you have valerian in that?
Don't think I did for you. Probably not. It's just pretty strong. And I think I probably put like lemon balm and chamomile in yours.
I noticed it had 2 types of mushrooms.
Yeah, mushrooms are really amazing. They're one of my favorite things too.
Is it powerful to knock you out?
It doesn't like knock you out, but it like really works really well. Like I find it very beneficial, and it kind of just helps you ease into sleep, and it keeps you, my experience with it and with a lot of people that that I work with that have used it, it just helps you stay asleep. Sometimes, you know, like you go to sleep really well, but you have that waking up and then your brain is like going, you can't. So it's good to even have it beside the bed, a little extra, and you just take a little dropper, and then it helps you kind of ease back into sleep.
What if I want to use it for anxiety?
Anxiety, it's not, I would not use valerian for that. There's other things. I would use it for sleep and for like spasms. It's very good for back spasms and muscular spasms as well. But for anxiety, there's like there's a bunch of different things I would use before I would use valerian. If you had the kind of anxiety where you can't sleep, I would maybe put that in a formula. Yeah.
comment on homemade preparations versus the commercial preparations, not just for valerian, but maybe
In
for other-
general,
other herbs?
yeah. So the homemade ones, in the sense of like, you're not measuring, so it's not, you're not gonna be able to say it has like X amount of this in it. So it's very just, it's, you know, it's sort of a simple formula, simplers. The formulas that are like here's a commercial formula, they have to have like specific standards about exactly how much alcohol and the percentage, and they have to be able to tell you on there that each serving is like exactly this amount of the plant. So when you make it at home in the way that I'm talking about, you can't figure that out. Okay, is that answering your question?
Well, I guess
Or is
I'm-
it, or is
I'm
it
just
something?
Any benefit, I mean, like at Walmart, you can buy valerian pills. for
Yeah,
example.
so,
I mean, what's the
okay, so like
advantage
to making your own.
yeah,
Well,
other than
okay, so
finding-
so especially tinctures last for a very long time. And if they're made well commercially or even at home with the method I'm telling you, they will be, you know, beneficial and viable. Capsules, depending on the brand, I mean, there's just a lot of not very reputable, and not a lot, but there's just some companies that just, when you grind up the herbs and put them in a capsule, first of all, they're sitting there for a really long time on the shelf. So they do start to lose their efficacy. That's why I think it's better to use like a tea, I think is better, or a tincture. Capsules, depending on the plant. Okay, there are some that are standardized, and there are certain companies that have very high quality, but you really need to seek those out. Like the typical, like what you're going to get at Walmart, you know, maybe not the best quality. And sometimes you're just going to get what you pay for too, you know. I mean, unfortunately, you know, you like things like turmeric is very popular and people want to use it. It needs to be actually made in a certain way for it to get beyond your gut and get to your joints, if that's why you're using it. So most people don't realize that with certain plants, they have to be made in a certain way. Turmeric is one of those. It really needs to be bound to either a fat or black pepper, like piperine, to help it move. Like it'll help your gut, but if you want to get it out to your joints, which is what a lot of people want with turmeric because it's very anti-inflammatory, it needs to be bound with something that will help it do that. So that's one example. So you do have to, you know, if you're going to buy things off the shelf of capsules of just ground herbs, just remember the more that the herb is exposed to air, that it's going to lose its efficacy more quickly. So that is the advantage of like making your own, grinding your own, putting it in a smoothie. You know, you got it within a, you know, year, you're going to use it. So you know it's going to be more effective.
12 years ago, the CDC took samples of ginseng, capsule ginseng from Whole Food stores, Walmarts, brand name places, and they found that the actual amount of ginseng in the capsules ranged from 0% to 40%.
Yeah, there's been,
And that's
yeah.
in the United States. There's quality control standards in Western Europe under the Germany Commission that we don't have here.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the German E-Commission is like, we were talking about valerian. You can buy valerian like at pharmacies in Germany, and at pharmacies they sell herbs, and a lot of pharmacists are versed in pharmaceuticals and herbs, so they can, you know, use both interchangeably. We don't have that here. And yeah, I mean, there have been several different plants that kind of thing that you're talking about has definitely happened. Ginseng being one that's, you know, very expensive and very revered and people know about it. I don't even use ginseng very much in my practice, almost at all, because it is so expensive. It's over harvested, and there are other things you can use that are, I think, better, and not better, but different, and don't have all those complications with it. So that's why when I do things, it's like I get the whole plant and I process it. I'm sure that I have it. I'm sure that it's a good, clean plant. But yeah, there's been issues with that, for sure. Yes.
I was wondering on the valerian,
Mhm.
what kind of habitat is it growing away?
So that's a great question. It will grow, it will spread. Like if you put it in your garden, it'll spread. But like I said, it's not in an invasive, like mint kind of way where it's just like, oh my God, I can't get it out. But I have seen it, it will grow in my garden in full sun and in partial shade. So,
We're looking for it.
oh,
in the wild.
you won't find that in the wild unless it's just escaped someone's garden, you know?
Really?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
also,
yeah.
I also want to look for that out because even though it's not part of, it's its own family, as you say, for a new person, you could easily misidentify things that are very poisonous, like the carrot family kind of.
Yes, make sure
stuff.
that you know what it is. You can buy, there's a couple of growers at the market. I don't think Lauren really sells that. But I have some seeds that I'm going to give away. So if there's more than one person that wants some, I'll just like put some in your hand. You can go home and plant it. And some valerian seeds, because once you get it established in your garden, it's good to go. It will spread and be happy. So, which is really fun. And it's a good plant. I love it. It's pretty too. And it's just like so fun having it pop up other places.
And it's okay to take it long term as a sleep aid.
Some people think it's not that, I mean, you have to determine, I wouldn't take it like forever. Like I would kind of take it for a couple weeks and then see how you do and see if you can come off it and then just like back the dose up. There's not really any like studies that it's like really bad for you. I wouldn't take it at super high doses for a really long time. So, but I would take it. Yeah, I would take it for a couple weeks, see if you can kind of back up, that kind of thing.
If you're digging up the whole plant using the root, how is it proliferating?
Well, you don't dig up all of them, like I dug up this one, but I've probably got like 50 in my yard. So, I'll dig up like 2 or 3, chop those up and make some tincture. But yeah, but it's true. When you dig up the root, that's the whole thing. It's gone. Yeah, that's the thing with roots. Okay, motherwort is another one. And it's a really pretty plant. I just picked these this morning. This is in the mint family, and in that it's got a very like distinctive square stem. Things in the mint family usually have square stems. It's got these pretty little flowers at the cusp where the leaves come out. And because again, it's in the mint family, it has a specific type of flower, and bees love it. It's usually covered with bees. And butterflies. And this is exactly when you would harvest it right now. See, it's got flowers, it's got leaves. This is exactly when you would harvest it to make a tincture. So I would like strip off all these leaves and flowers and then chop them up and put them in a tincture. This one, I didn't really talk about this too much, but certain plants are better for teas and certain plants are better for tinctures just in flavor. This is not like the best in a tea. This is a better for a tincture, just because some of them just don't taste that great. This is one of those. I love this plant. It definitely, once you plant it, it will replant itself through your garden, but it's super easy to pull up. Even though it's in the mint family, it doesn't grow like prostrate like spearmint or peppermint and get like down into the soil. It's just, if you don't want it, you can just pull it out. It's very easy to get rid of if you don't want it, but I think it's quite lovely. Yes. Yeah, it can grow taller. Yeah, it'll start. Yeah, I would say it's about 2 feet tall when it's at its full height.
I was wondering, any chance stem would root in water?
It might, and actually y'all can have these, but anybody who wants some of these can just like take some. Oh my gosh, just take them. You could take this and make a tincture out of it. And you might be able to root these. I would not be surprised. Mints definitely do that. They will, yeah, you can definitely root them. And I've never done it with motherwort, but I've done it with other mints that I've just had in water for too long, and they're just like, wow.
Does that grow wild?
You will see this. This is definitely naturalized. I've seen it in really strange places, like down at like Glade or in different areas. So you will see it. It definitely has made its way into the world.
I think I may have seen something like it at the base of
Yeah, I would not be surprised. It's got really cool looking leaves. It's just really pretty, I think.
What does the leaf smell like?
Well, you can kind of smell it when we're done. I don't know. It doesn't have like a real mint smell at all. It's very different in that sense. It doesn't smell like aromatic.
So as far as like foraging in the wild, like for people like me that are kind of opposed to like spraying like pesticides, do you have any like favorite areas that you go foraging in? Like,
where have I gone around here? I mean, I typically go like, yeah, I would definitely not get anything on the huckleberry. I'll just say that because I know that they spray the sides of the huckleberry a lot. I would say maybe out at Pandapas, you could probably kind of go off trail and find stuff. And I don't think there's any issues with harvesting out there. If anybody knows that, I don't think there is.
Not
Yeah.
along roadsides.
Not along roadsides, not along sidewalks, anything like that. I wouldn't. I don't really know if you, I mean, I don't really think you're supposed to like harvest stuff in national forest. Do y'all know? Anybody know? I mean, I think if you were to harvest like plantain in a national forest, it would be fine. But like, don't go dig up like trillium or, you know, any kind of like, you know, really special wildflower. But like, if you're trying to get like dandelion or plantain, and they probably would like it if you got it,
I'm sure
honestly.
they wouldn't mind kudzu.
Oh, what? They wouldn't mind, right?
They wouldn't mind your harvesting kudzu.
Yeah, and that's a very medicinal plant too, which is like why we should be using these plants. That's an incredible plant for a lot of things. You could dig that up. That's a good one too. Any other questions? Okay, so motherwort, Leonoris cardiaca. Sometimes scientists actually, instead of naming the plants about themselves, they would name it for what it's good for, which is one thing I like about this. So it is actually good for the heart. It's cardiaca. It's a beautiful plant for the heart. It's a nervine, which means it's like calming. I like to use it with people going through menopause. I like to use it with people with women menstruating. It helps kind of ease things through the menstrual cycle. So it's really nice for that. It's just Leonoris means like lion-hearted, so like brave and strong. I think of it energetically like that as well. If you're going through grief and things like that, I think it can be helpful to add to a formula. And it's unnerving and it's calming, but not in the sense of like valerian. It's not going to make you fall asleep, but it just kind of evens things out, which I really like. But very, very good for people going through different like menstrual changes and things like that. So I really like it for that. Super easy. And menagogue, it means that like if you're having like a stagnant period and you need help moving the blood, it will help with that. Okay, so motherwort, super easy to grow. Once you get it going, it'll go. Oh my gosh, it's almost one. All right, let me get to elecampane, and then I'm gonna let y'all taste stuff if you want. Elecampane, I didn't have any in flower right now, but I have some I'm gonna plant. So it's inula, helenium, which is inula, also inulum, that thing I was talking about that's in several of these plants. So it has a lot of that in it. This is a plant that is used typically in like respiratory formulas, and you use the root, you dig the root up, make a tincture. It's not one that I would make a tea out of. It's that thing that is, if you have that kind of cough that is very like you want to get the mucus out kind of thing, it helps you have a like productive cough. It's not the kind of cough that's like a dry cough that you need to soothe. It's also a liver stimulant. It's antiseptic. This plant is so beautiful. I have to say, I think it's really nice to have in a garden because it gets huge, and then it's got like a big sunflower on it. It's in the sunflower. It's an aster. It's in the sunflower family. It is a big sunflower, but it's a perennial one. It's very gorgeous. This will also self-sow through your garden, but not in a like obnoxious way, in a really nice kind of way. I wanted to say that I have a few books here that I think are good for y'all to look at. And I have some things if you want to try, and I'll show you how you can do it. It's like so this is a dandelion cocoa maple bitters. So what I would have people do is you just take the tincture and you just have you make a little cup with like that, and then you just lick it and you can taste it so that we're all like clean Nobody's like
That's from the
sticking it.
dandelion root,
Mhm.
right?
So the what?
Dandelion root.
Yeah, so that's like, this is the dandelion root, cocoa nibs, and maple syrup. I also have a burdock dandelion, which is root and leaf, and ginger and rum. You can taste that too if you want. And then I also brought some elecampane to taste. It's really, you'll see, it's like a very strong flavor.
That last one,
Mhm.
is that a lot of flour, is it?
The elecampane? No. I marked a picture of it, 'cause that was the one that I didn't have. Here is the actual flower of the elecampane.
Mhm.
So it's very beautiful. It gets really big and it can kind of flop over because it gets
Wonder if
like
deer
huge.
like it.
They don't. Mhm.
Oh, that's
They don't.
really.
None of
good.
these plants deer like. They're all 100% deer tested, let me tell you. In my yard.
All these?
Yeah, none of deer will not eat that.
If you're growing, chickens that
Mhm.
are not free range, I was used a lot of dandelion and plantain. I imagine some of these others would be good.
Yes.
Or if you have cage birds or indoor birds.
For them to eat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
the Dandelion and plantain.
So good. And they're so medicinal for the birds as well. Yes.
Yeah, so we have a question on Zoom.
Okay.
They're asking, any harmful interactions among herbs, like similar to drug interactions?
Yes, absolutely. So if you are going to take these, you need to look that up. If you're taking certain medications, you need to look it up and see if there are interactions, because I can't really go into that right now. But yeah, there are certain drugs, especially like warfarin and any kind of benzos, things like that. You need to look that up and see what the interactions are.
Any sources they can refer to, like where they can read about it more?
About the interactions or, yeah, so drugs.com, I think is one of them you can look up. And I mean, really, if you kind of look on the Mayo Clinic, they'll have a lot on that. You can look up PubMed and put in the plant, and they'll usually have contraindications at the end. Mhm. And like for most herb books, they will say like contraindications, but yeah, I mean, if you're on warfarin or any kind of benzo, those are, pretty hardcore. And so you need to like make sure that these don't interact with that. Not all plants do, but some do. And if you have specific allergies, there's always idiosyncratic reactions. So you have to educate yourself and learn what you can and can't use.
I just learned last week that turmeric in blood.
Yeah, in large doses, yes. And so it tends to be like some people, this is one of the things, herbs, like if you look up how many people die from taking pharmaceuticals a year, it's like a lot of numbers. If you look up how many people from herbs, it's like practically none, but herbs get targeted and things like that because they just do. But so what I was going to say is that when it says what the dosage is, a lot of times people are like, oh, it says to take, one, capsule 3 times a day. So I'm going to take 6 capsules 4 times a day, which is what like just happened recently. Somebody was taking hemp oil and something else, and they were taking 6 times the dose with something else. And so it gives herbs a bad rap. And you have to be, it is an amazing thing. I love plants. I think they're incredible. I use them all the time with people safely, but you have to respect the plant too. And I mean, if you eat 12 pounds of chocolate, it's going to be a problem, right? So like anything can be a problem if you use too much of it. So I think it's important to realize just because it's a plant does not mean it does not have, deleterious effects if you're taking it improperly, or there can be idiosyncratic, like some people are just allergic to things in the Aster family. So you need to know that. If you take it and you don't feel good, stop taking it, and typically it just goes away. Right? So you need to kind of, educate yourself.
Yeah, so what is a safe dosage? Let's say I go home and I make elephantine for my cough. And what is a safe dosage of it?
So for most people, if they're healthy and not on certain drugs that would interact, you could take like I always start with a lower dosage first, which is like, it's about, 2.5 mils up to 5 mils. That's a teaspoon. Okay, so it's not very much. You could do that, but start with a lower dose always.
A day?
Yeah,
5
like
mils
right
every day?
before bed. Mhm. Yeah, that's like how much I would do.
Thank you.
So, you know, but just, you know, read up on it. You will see in any herb books, they will have dosing, and that's usually for an adult person. It's kind of based on like a 150-pound person. So if you're a lot smaller than that, lower. If you're bigger, maybe more. For kids, the dosing is completely different. So.
So that big tall one over there, that's the valerian. Okay. Get that.
Okay, so I wanted to say I have some seeds of valerian and elecampane, and I'm happy to give these away. And if there's more than one person that wants them, I was thinking what we could do is just take a little piece of your paper and make a little envelope, and we could share them around if people want to take some for their garden, because they're super gorgeous. And these,
Where did you buy those?
these, oh, okay, this is a good company. It's called Strictly Medicinal, and they have strictly medicinal seeds. But they're out of Oregon, and they have everything I've talked about. I mean, they have even like, you know, these things, but I just realized these seeds got wet up here. So somebody should take them and plant them ASAP. Yeah, they're both perennial. And then these are a couple books that I think are fun that y'all might want to look at. And these are specifically like, you know, plants. These are that you would find in our area. Let's see. Here are some of my cards if you want. My website is blueskybotanicalsva.com. You have to have the VA if you want to learn more. I do workshops and plant walks. I love doing that. A lot of times my workshops, most of my workshops are not in this format. They're very hands-on. They're very small. We'll do like making teas, or we'll make different like things out of mushrooms, or, you know, other things like that. But they're usually like in the winter, I usually do one on immune health, and we make elderberry syrup and a couple other things. So it's fun. It's hands-on. You get to take things with you. So I am not sure yet. I'm due to do a mushroom workshop because I really love medicinal mushrooms.
Where will that be?
And it's so fun. Yeah, they're one of my favorite things.
Where will that be?
I usually do it at Annie K's. My friend Paula, who owns that store, she's got a big kitchen upstairs with a big counter.
Oh, yeah.
And so we set up there and we make things, and yeah,